Hi, I'm Brendan Granger and welcome to 5-Star Conversations, where we talk with hoteliers making a positive impact on the hospitality industry. And today I have the pleasure of talking to Tish Nyar from TFE. Welcome, Tish.
Thanks, Brendan.
Tish, I'm just going to read your background. We've got two audiences. We've got the people who can see us and we've got the people who are just listening to us in their car and things like that. So I'll read your background. We'll actually put it up when we post this as well. And then I'll get you to tell us a little bit about your early career. So Tish, you've just been recently promoted to Senior Director of Operations for Australia and New Zealand with TFE Hotels, where you've been for 6 years, I believe. Just celebrated your 6th birthday, I think, in February. Yeah. So Tish has a wide range of expertise gained over 30 years in the hotel industry. He has a proven track record in operations and overall asset management. His overall industry experience can also be seen in the work that he's done with New South Wales Tourism Accommodation Australia Board and the National Accommodation Division Board, and more recently with the AAOA New South Wales Advisory Committee. Also, his strategic management certification from Macquarie University Graduate School of Management and the Advanced Diploma of Hotel Management from the Blue Mountains International Hotel School, and his presence on the TAA and AHA National and New South Wales boards. And I believe, Tish, last year you also received a leadership award from the Blue Mountains International Hotel School. Tish currently manages a team of 3 regional general managers and 51 hotels across TFE's Australian and New Zealand network. Welcome again, Tish.
Thanks, Brendan.
So Tish, we've heard you've been in the industry for over 30 years. I think I first met you when you were with Event or Ridges as it was back then. And I know that, I believe, I might be wrong, but you were the first year at the Blue Mountains International Hotel School. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. I started at the school in the second intake of the first year of operation of the school. So
wow.
I was back in 1991.
Yep.
Yeah.
And from Blue Mountains International Hotel School, how did your career progress to the point where you're obviously responsible these days for 51 hotels across the TFE network?
Look, the early career stages for me was very much around getting as much experience as possible in all facets of the operation, whether it was at the region of Sydney, which was my first hotel that I ever worked at.
Okay.
Incidentally, it's the hotel I had my wedding night at and got engaged with my wife at as well. But I worked there. I started out as a banquets waiter, and I just looked for and hunted down whatever opportunities I could find, whether it was doing porterage, working as a glassy in the George Street, right through to doing stewarding and working in the staff canteen. It was just seeking out to get as much experience in a hotel, no matter what level I could. And it was funny, at that hotel, I actually met people that I worked with 20, 30 years later, and they'd become quite close friends over the years as well, who'd become industry stalwarts. And working with people like Ted Wright and Serge Doncierge and those kind of early 90s pioneers in Australia for 5-star hotels, of which there weren't many at all back in those days, was quite inspirational, and gave me the drive and aspiration to continue on and try and become what they were at the time.
Yep, that's great. And from that point of view, then, how did you get into hospitality? You know, was it something that you chose? Was it? I know one of my other guests, you know, literally saw an advert for the Blue Mountains International Hotel School, and that was it for him. You know, What was it like for you?
I was actually looking at two very, very different careers. I was looking at going in to become a builder or a chippy.
Okay.
Just after I'd finished school, I wasn't interested in university proper, I suppose.
Yep.
And I was also interested in hospitality. At the time I'd finished school, I was working for McDonald's and was a manager there, and like that business, I got into the business management side of the operation and understanding how it worked. I got to know the owner of the franchise and still am in contact with him today as well.
Okay.
So that side of the business really interested me, and obviously I didn't necessarily find flipping burgers or being part of McDonald's for an extended period of time was my thing. It became the thing for some of my friends at the time, which is great, and it's a great career move. So I don't want to get any misinterpretations around that. But I think the hospitality or hotel side of the business and the romance of hospitality and hotels attracted me, as well as that commercial oversight. And similar to your other guest, I saw the ad for the hotel school and found that it was probably within my reach. I was a self-funded, looking at self-funding my education, and Blue Mountains was probably the better option for me at the time.
Okay.
Outside of going international. I was looking at and investigating Swiss hotel schools at the time, and Blue Mountains gave the IHTTI diploma at the time as well. So ended up applying there, not sure that I'd get in, but pleasingly got in and started the journey, and very pleased that I did.
That's fantastic. Isn't it interesting how McDonald's has played a role in so many people's early careers as well? I think a great management training program that they've got. So
it still does. Two of our people and capabilities teams have moved over to TFE hotels from McDonald's.
Yep.
And the similarities in terms of the people and capabilities requirements and business management requirements are very well aligned.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's great to see.
That's good. That's good. Tish, is there a funny or embarrassing experience from your early career that you'd be happy to share with us on camera?
Probably the safest one was, and I've told this one a few times before, so I don't know if it's that new, but I'm actually dyslexic and left-handed, and was left to set the ballroom of the Regent after a breakfast service for dinner that night. There was only maybe 2 or 3 of us.
Yep.
And I'd managed to set the ballroom back to front, the 600 seats. So back in those days, they could actually clock you off and you had to start again. So that certainly isn't the practice anymore. But yeah, that was good fun, and it taught me which side the knife goes on for the rest of my career.
That yes, lesson well learned. That's fantastic. Tish, you talked about inspiration from people like Ted Wright. Are there other people in the industry that have inspired you through your career, and why?
I think there's a long list of them. Everyone from Ted Wright and Serge, probably in that first experience.
Yep.
There was a lecturer who was at the Blue Mountains, who's been an industry stalwart and unfortunately passed away a number of years ago, Val Cook, Norman Arundel, David Sargent. And I think the common theme with all of them was very much they are traditional hoteliers. They held a very high regard for the guest, the experience, but they also had integrity in terms of how they treated their team. Was just as important. And they knew that if they treated their team with integrity, their team would treat their guests with integrity and give them that service culture that they really deserved. They may have required some training and development in refinement, but the overarching theme that I've found with all of the leaders that I've really enjoyed working with and have found inspirational is that they love the guest, they operate with integrity and honesty and transparency, both with the guests, their business owners, their business leaders, and their teams.
Yep, that's great. That's great. David Sargent was, it's amazing. I remember there was a time in my career where I had left a PMS installer and wasn't drifting, but someone suggested I go and have a chat to him, and literally I think rang up and he set aside some time and we had a bit of a chat, and he gave me some advice on, what I should be doing. It was, when I think back now, it was just amazing that he gave up that amount of time for some kid. I'll never forget that.
And there's so many of those stories out there that, oddly enough, that people think that these seniors in the business are inaccessible and don't have time, and the assumption is they're always too busy. Yep. But the number of stories like that I've heard over the years and seen and experienced has been quite significant. And again, that just goes back to that traditional take care of your team and take care of your guests and operate with transparency and honesty and be yourself as well. Something that I learned at one stage of my career was I went into a business that wasn't me, and yep. I was trying to be someone that just was not. It was outside of my personality type, And I only did that job for a short period of time because I realized that I wasn't being honest to myself or my family, and my career was going to go downhill if I didn't make a change and go back to a business that I really believed in and could interact with on that level.
Isn't that interesting? That's one of the reasons I like to start off by sort of letting people know where you've come from, because I know I've been guilty of it myself, seeing people like Norman Arundel or David Sargent thinking, well, I don't know, you think they woke up one morning and they just held this CEO position, but they started, in banqueting or restaurants or the stores like everyone did. And we forget that,
Yeah, and we see it across the business. If you look at it, Lottie and Irvin Viador and Alan Viador, it's just consistent. Alan Ridge, and the names go on in terms of the people who operate at that level with that integrity and so on. It's there's a lot more out there than you think, and sometimes we don't necessarily stop and take count of that or take stock of it.
And some of them too, to be honest, fly below the radar a little bit. I don't think Norman would mind me saying, but he's one of those quiet achievers that you very rarely see in the limelight, but he's behind the scenes and he's responsible for so much of the success of Event's hotel division.
Agreed.
Yeah. Tish, is there something, a talent that you have or a hobby that not many people would know about you?
I'm a pretty open book, Brendan. Most of my team and most of my friends know I enjoy my garden. I like to have a surf. I enjoy a good run. I'm still playing soccer. I've moved to the over 45s, thankfully. The over 35s were way too quick for me these days, and love my family and spending time with them as well. So I'm a very vanilla kind of guy. There's not a lot of surprises in there. And I don't hide it very well, but I absolutely love to travel. It's one thing, and immersing yourself in cultures around the world is probably up there and comes a close second or third amongst being with my family at times.
Gotcha. I share that passion as well. And if you can do it with your family, even better. Yeah, that's what I love. Tish, before our interview, I asked you if there was anything that you could have printed on a T-shirt, what would that be? And I think you've got that in front of you now, a little package. I think it said even "Don't open it."
I do, and it does say, it's blurred out now, but it does say "Don't open it."
Yep.
No, I didn't open it.
Lovely. I think there's actually, well, I'm not sure how my team packaged it. Sometimes they put package inside just in case it does get open so that it still remains invisible.
We'll find out. I assume I'm opening it now.
Yep, that's fine, please.
Yeah, we've got balloons.
Yep. We're looking for some wrapping paper that's got stars on it in line with a 5-star conversation, but it's eluding us at the moment. But
yes, I've got it here, and it's a T-shirt.
You chose to have on your T-shirt, and I love the saying, when you pray for rain, you have to deal with the mud as well. What's sort of the inspiration behind that?
I think it's a matter of keeping things real and keeping egos in check and keeping yourself grounded. It's whenever you have a great deal of success, there's always going to be something in the background, and you're going to have to deal with something.
Yeah.
And that something may be yourself at times as well. So making sure you are keeping yourself honest to yourself, and success is very much part of being a team. And at other times, and I think we'll talk about it later, is that every successful project has got plenty of failures as well. So again, there's always going to be a little bit of mud in every piece of success. So that's probably where that comes from. Yeah,
I love it. I've got a friend who says if it never rained, we'd live in a desert, which is sort of similar. There will always be good and there'll always be bad, and everything passes, I suppose, as well. It's one of the lessons I learned out of COVID.
Absolutely.
And there's so much you can't control, so just give it up. At some point, we'll have to get a photo of you in your T-shirt, but that's okay.
I'll get back to you later.
Yeah, no problems. As you know, one of my passions, apart from hotels, is technology. So we'll touch on some technology questions, but they don't have to be purely technology answers, as we discussed before. So probably the first question is there a trend in the industry that's making you either excited or nervous?
Look, I think there's a combination of two pieces within that. The trend in the industry at the moment is trying to leverage technology to create that seamless service level or that immediacy in our delivery of core pieces of information.
Yep.
We're not quite there yet. I think there's still a lot of work to do. The piece that probably scares me the most is artificial intelligence at the moment. Its capabilities are incredible. And I was looking at something earlier today, Chat GPT, with our workplace health and safety manager, and we were joking around, just having a look to see what its capabilities were, and we asked it to write us a piece on working from heights,
Okay.
but using a Shakespeare language tilt to it.
Yeah.
And it did that exceptionally well, and it was quite fun to play around with. But then we had an incident report came in while we were talking. It wasn't that serious, but it was enough to catch our attention. We had a look at it.
Yep.
And we asked the chatbot to come up with a quick training piece around the response to the incident. And we'd just done a debrief on the incident, and the chatbot came up with, I think, 9 out of the 10 suggestions that we'd come up with prior. So I think that is both exciting and scary. I think that AI will potentially remove some of that connection with the guest that we have at a personal level.
Yeah.
In some instance for the better, which is where it's exciting. I think that guests will get responses and fast response on service times and will improve service delivery.
Yep.
But they'll also sometimes won't even know that they're talking to a chatbot, which is scary. And you've lost that control of human interaction and understanding and capability. It's a little bit like, having come back from India recently and having to use Google Translate to speak to some people in Hindi. The translations are interesting at times, and some of them were really good and some of them weren't great. But that technology piece, will it go too far? Won't it go too far? I think we've got to tread with caution on that front. And then the privacy regulations that sit next to that is that, you look at what's happened to TikTok overnight and in the States, and the questions and the power of the company to trace data and those sort of things. So I think finding that balance and that fine balance between human interaction and technology, there's a lot of things that technology will do for the better for us. There's no doubt about that. So that piece is exciting. Will it go too far? I'm sure it'll go too far. When you pray for rain, you've got to deal with the mud.
Yep.
And we'll learn our lessons, but that's probably the duality that we're looking at the moment.
Yeah. There is, I 100% agree. There's a fine balance there. And I think particularly in our industry, because we are a people first industry, we need to work out, how far we can go with technology. But I agree, Chat GPT is amazing. And I'm using a couple of extensions at the moment, which are derivatives of that, if you get an email, you can literally just say, thanks, and it reads the context of the email and actually writes a reply. And it is amazing. I mean, you have to fine tune it, but as you said, it's probably getting you to about 90%. And I was actually making function inquiries, to book a function room for something. And, I just responded to the hotels and it was brilliant. It picked up the name of the property. It picked up the function room that they've recommended. The fact that it can understand context is just amazing.
Yeah, so the two sides of that is there's an incredible time-saving capability and so on, but does that also create a de-skilling issue for you as well? Because you're not thinking through the answers, you're not problem solving as you're typing the answers, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like the generational issue where you've got reduction of focus time from some of the kids because they're watching 90-second videos rather than 2 or 3 hour movies, and we're seeing that generationally. So will that have both effects of improving the quality of life for ourselves with simple answers and responses, but will it also remove some of our problem solving skills because we won't need them as much?
I think you're 100% right. Unfortunately, that is it. I think of basically, Google Maps versus a street directory. And, if you gave me a street directory now, I'd be hard pressed. I don't think wouldn't be impossible, but how did we used to navigate, as a single driver using a street directory?
Yeah. So there's definitely some excitement in there and some benefits, and Google Maps, again, making my way around areas of India that were quite remote recently.
Yep,
Google Maps got me there and found me people that I would never have found if I didn't have it.
exactly right. Exactly right. And that, yeah, as you said, there are good and bad, and to technology, and I suppose we just need to find that line.
Absolutely.
On that point, then, is there something that you've implemented and it had such a positive impact that you thought, my God, why didn't we implement this earlier?
I don't think there's been anything that we've implemented where we've gone, we could have implemented it earlier, but some of the simple things that have made a huge difference, but they're probably not as visible as you would think. The key locking systems and the capabilities of the Wi-Fi connectivity with the key locking systems now that allow you to remove a guest remotely if you have to, main key, and all of those sort of pieces are there. I think that, the technology around payment gateways and how we're operating on payment has improved significantly again. There's a lot of really small moving parts in our operations that have made a huge difference and have been relatively seamless. And I think they became more visible during COVID, but in the lead up to COVID, it was there. So pre-arrival sequencing and pre-arrival guest management now is so much easier, and you can prepare your hotel in such a better way for the arrival of a guest if you get that right.
Yep.
I think that one of the challenges at the moment is there are so many moving parts to all of this, and nobody has come up with an all-inclusive solution that works on scale.
Yep.
We have companies who say that they have the solution, but then when you deep dive into it to really dig through it, and this because we've worked together on some of these solutions,
Yes.
It's only operating in 50 rooms of one hotel in North America or something like that. I think the piece will be when we can bring them all together in one solution and bring in those parts and then continue to plug and play those parts as the technology improves will be awesome. But anything that we implemented that we thought we should have implemented earlier, we've always tried to, or I've always tried to try and stay ahead of the game, but there hasn't been anything that I think, and to Ted Horner's piece, and I know you get on with Ted quite well, you explorers get arrows and settlers get land.
That's true.
There's a level of caution there in terms of being first to market.
Yeah. And I respect, I know we've been on panels together before, and you have a very practical approach. And now that we're talking, I can see that it comes back from, the people that you said that you've learnt from over the years. Too often people look at technology as, the ultimate solution. Let's just do that. And you call it whatever you want to call it, the bright shiny syndrome, and we can all be guilty of it. But I know that talking to you, you've always looked at it from that guest perspective. Will it enhance the guest experience or not? And that's probably one of the key questions that needs to be asked.
And sometimes I've seen it happen with a competitor chain that we looked at probably back in 2015.
Yep.
And they loaded this hotel up with an incredible amount of tech, whether it was you had your own mobile phone assigned to your room, not as in your personal device, but you had a mobile phone provided, and the HVAC system was all teched up and blinds and so on. But I put one of our owners into the hotel just to experience it.
Yep.
And they walked out of the hotel and said, I can't deal with this. It's overload and I need an hour to familiarize myself with the room. So it's very much finding that intuitive service piece and have it work seamlessly. For want of a better example, with Apple or any of those sort of companies in their pioneering days, they tried to make sure their product was as simple and intuitive as possible. And I think that's what we have to maintain some focus on with our guests.
Exactly right. And my view is you need to offer the guest the choice. It could be a sophisticated HVAC, which is controlled from a tablet or something, but ideally have the wall panel remain there where it's just simply, up and down to choose the temperature.
Your temperature and fan speed.
Exactly. Because you shouldn't, there are plenty of examples where I've heard guests going to the bathroom and getting a face washer to remove the light globe from the bedside because they couldn't work out how to turn it off.
Yeah.
Or I've been to hotels where an airline crew person used the luggage tag to, tape over a smoke sensor, which had a light, which was just causing too much light pollution. Lots of things like that.
Yeah. There's plenty of those experiences.
So Tish, the employee experience or team experience now is just as important as the guest experience. I think it's Richard Branson who's quoted as saying, if you look after your team, then your team look after your customers, and in turn they'll look after your profitability. What solutions are you looking at or implementing to improve the team experience?
Look, there's a range of pieces in there that we are either testing or currently implementing. So the pieces for the team are making sure that our time and availability and rostering system is as simple and effective as possible and as seamless as possible. Yep. Especially after COVID, where what we found is our headcount has increased while our FTE requirements are still about the same.
Yeah,
we need to manage more people to cover the same number of hours. So the complexities of making sure you're rostering them effectively and minimising the impacts of overtime and payroll and fatigue and so on for the teams and meeting their requirements because of the team's lifestyle focus these days.
Yep,
is definitely there. Any of the systems that we implement within the operation need to be as simple for the guest to use as they are for the team.
Yep.
If you make it onerous for the team to set up a great guest experience, you'll find that they'll have a degree of frustration or stress, and that will transpose into that face-to-face contact that they have with the guest.
Yep.
So making sure that we're looking at it from both ends of the stick. So if we're putting a system in and it slows the interaction with the IT down so that the team are having to stand for longer periods of time in front of the guest to get a better outcome, it's not going to work. So a seamless experience, that simple interaction that we look at for the guest,
yep,
needs to be just as important for our team as well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So everything from how we run our PMS systems and what we plug and play into our PMS systems for our CRM through to payment gateways and so on and so forth, we look at it from both ends of the stick to make sure that the team can have a great interaction.
Yep.
And we're doing that consistently now, as well as
Yep. And knowing TFE as I do, I think you guys do a great job in controlling that experience. And I suppose it's potentially a little bit easier being privately owned, I suppose, or?
Yes and no. We've got a large number of HMAs now within the operation, so we still have key stakeholders to manage.
Yep.
The joint venture partners both have got great experience in hotels. They've both got a long history of hotels and hospitality, so that makes it easier as well.
Yeah.
Being a private company, we've still got investors we have to convince that this is a great idea to, though.
Yep.
And spending the money, you have to prove yourself before you get the cash to go ahead with the program.
And that makes sense. Makes sense. On that point, is there a current hospitality trend or fad that you think is probably overrated and is going to die out?
I'll be interested to see what happens with QR codes. They become fundamentally important to us through COVID, and the exponential growth of the interactions with QR codes has been huge. Now, when I look and experience some of those QR code interactions, they're quite clunky, and your ability to manage the menu experience and look at the menu on your phone and those sort of things, it's just not quite as strong as having that tactile interaction with a menu, or the interaction that you have with the team member taking your order. You can't ask the questions and those sort of things. So that it's awesome in an experience where you're just going to get a simple meal at the pub.
Yep.
But does it really give you that high-end experience? And I've seen some high-end operations have that interfaced with their operation. TFE have actively engaged with QR codes. I say that unashamedly.
Yeah.
Some of our experiences are fantastic, and some of them we're working on because we can see they need some refinement and improvement. And some of them we've removed altogether because they're not enhancing guest service, but they did make it easier for us to interact with the guests during COVID with the health restrictions that were in place.
And I think your last comment is probably the most important one. If it enhances a guest experience, and going back to that restaurant, I know that there are some restaurants I've dealt with that are like, our dining experience is a personal experience, and we will not look at QR codes. That's just not who we are. And knowing that is completely fine. I think, as we said, if technology is used in the right way, in the right situation, it can enhance the guest experience. But if you don't look at it from a holistic approach, it can actually be detrimental to that guest experience as well. So,
yeah. And I think going back to your earlier comment is giving the guest a choice.
mm,
So there's some people who love a QR code and want to interact that way, and that's great. But having a choice of going down the path of a QR code or a menu and an interactive experience, I think is probably a really good option outside of just having the QR code and mandating that. But again, it goes to the level of experience and type of operation. And we've been through this evolution with hotels and TVs. You know, we've had the checkout experience on TVs, and we've tried to put bills on TVs and that sort of thing. We put room service menus on TVs. And I remember the first time I got a guest complaint saying I did not want to stop watching my movie to order my room service. And that was one of those aha moments where you just go, didn't think of that at the time. This was going to be an awesome piece of technology, and being a pioneer in that area back in the day, we took the arrow instead of getting the land.
And try and type, that you want no onions on your hamburger on a TV remote control.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Surprisingly enough, I still have hotels that come to me today and say this is what they want to do. And it's like, well, I think we've moved on a little bit from that.
It's still an element of the piece, and it goes back to that, give the guest a choice. So
True.
If they want to use the TV, they can. If they want to use a QR code, they can. Or if they want to pick up the phone or ring someone, they can. So if you've got that level of choice in your operation, then that's probably a great guest experience, because they can interact with you in whichever way they feel most comfortable.
Yep.
And you probably find that's generational as well. So if you've got a millennial in the hotel room as opposed to a baby boomer, you've got all of your options covered, so everyone's comfortable.
Exactly. Except we need to start moving towards like an omni-channel chat environment so that our millennials will be able to use, WhatsApp or Voxer or whatever it is their preferred method of communication. And as a hotel, we get it into one central point, because at the moment it's impossible to manage.
It is.
But we'll get there. I suppose the final question, Tish, is what do you think the industry is going to look like in maybe 1 year from now, 3 years from now, and 10 years? And is there anything that we should be doing to prepare for what that future will look like?
That's a really, really difficult question, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, because none of us anticipated what was going to happen.
True.
And, if I look at the fundamentals of hospitality, which is that human interaction that has been the foundation, and personalization has been the foundation of our industry for thousands of years.
Yep.
Has been critical, and I'm hoping that landscape doesn't change. I think that technology will make its way into our operations, probably not as quickly as we would anticipate, because it's that human interaction and anticipation is hard. AI will definitely make its way in. In 10 years' time, I think AI will be a significant part of our call centers, our basic first response to typical questions. So instead of having an FAQ page, it'll be driven by chatbots and AI responses and so on. And that's propagating itself already through the industry. So sort of in that 2 or 3 years' time, I think that will definitely make its way through. I think that as far as the landscape is concerned, the timing between crises will be reduced. So as an industry, we need to be prepared for that in whatever form that looks like, whether it's wars in Europe or nationally. There's a lot of landscapes there that are actually quite scary in the geopolitical space.
Yep.
I think that travel will recover. The airline seat capacities are still lower than they were in 2019. People have still got that really big pent-up demand for international travel. I think that as the population, they're talking about population decline internationally now, but we've still got some pretty big numbers that when we look at the landscapes of Venice and some of the national parks and restrictions on people movement now,
yes,
I think that will have an impact on our industry as well. I think that those movement pieces will be fairly significant. And I'm talking fairly broad pieces as far as what the industry will look like. But I would still hope that our people and our product follows trend. We've got lifestyle hotels now. Who knows what's going to be here in 10 years' time? but we still work on a 3 to 5 year sort of timeline and roadmap.
Yep.
As far as products concerned, because those new products take that 3 to 5 years to develop and get up and financed and built. But more and more lifestyle operations and comfort and leisure travel will still be there. So that lifestyle piece of how people travel and interact with work will improve, and that will change how our operations and hotels look and feel as well, which is already happening.
Yeah. But I think the most important point, and I will see it in the future as well, that the human element is still the most critical piece. Technology will support it, but we will always be a people business.
Treating the guests properly and treating your team properly and treating each other properly is with that integrity and transparency and honesty is going to be the foundation of our industry. And I'd really hope to see that continue in the 10 years that comes.
I'm sure it will. Tish, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Brendan. It's been great to join you.
Thank you.